She said, "I'm too old for love," until the cowboys stayed the night. And she trembled till dawn. The wind moved like breath over the empty Wyoming hills. No music, no birds, just the hush of winter clinging to the bones of a land too tired to complain. Snow clung to the edges of the dirt road, half melted, half frozen again. Fences leaned crooked like old men with memories of better posture. At the far edge of the horizon, where sky touched the earth like a whisper, stood a worn-down cabin made of grey timber and older silence. Inside, the stove crackled low. A kettle sang, then sighed, then gave up. Martha sat in the chair by the window, her hands wrapped around a chipped blue mug. She wasn't waiting for anyone. Not anymore. People stopped coming years ago. Her hair, once black and pinned tight, now hung like silver threads braided into loss. The curtains hadn't been changed in 15 years, neither had the air. It still smelled faintly of pine and grief. She was 62, a widow for nearly 20. But it wasn't the widowhood that bruised her most. It was what came after. The stretch of years where no one touched her hand, no one asked her if she was cold or if the nights were too long. Time had turned her into wallpaper, present but unneeded. A knock echoed through the cabin. It wasn't loud, not urgent, just unexpected. She stood slowly. Her knees creaked. Her hand rested on the edge of the table for balance. When she opened the door, the cold stepped in first, curling around her ankles like a curious cat. And then came the man, tall, dust-covered, face shaded under a bent cowboy hat. His coat looked like it had been through 2 winters and 3 bad decisions. But his eyes, pale blue, quiet, held something familiar. Not safety, not charm, something lonelier. "I'm not asking for trouble," he said, voice low. "Just somewhere to wait out the night. Storms come." Martha didn't speak. Not at first. She looked past him, at the truck parked sideways near the fence, steam rising from its hood. The storm clouds tumbling dark in the west, the way his hand shook just slightly. She could have closed the door, said nothing, let the world stay as quiet as it was. Instead, she stepped aside. He entered with his hat in his hands, like a man entering a church. He didn't speak again. Neither did she. The door clicked shut behind him, sealing in the hush. And somewhere deep beneath the old floorboards, the past began to shift. Martha poured him tea without asking. No sugar, no milk, just heat in a cracked mug. He sat at the corner of the table, shoulders hunched like a man used to being told he didn't belong. The fire warmed the room, but not the space between them. His hands, weather-bitten and scarred, stayed wrapped around the cup, as if it might save him from something colder than snow. She glanced up at him once. He didn't meet her eyes. There was something in the silence he carried. Not arrogance, not danger, just something broken, like a dog that had been kicked too often and now flinched at kindness. She knew that silence. She wore it herself. Outside, the wind pressed its face to the window, whining low like it wanted in. Inside, the man finally spoke again, just one sentence. "I can sleep by the stove if that's all right." Martha nodded. Then, after a pause, her voice cracked out like something unused. "You hungry?" He looked at her like he hadn't heard the question in years. Then, slowly, nodded. She heated soup, leftover potato and leeks, and placed the bowl in front of him. Still, he didn't eat right away. He stared at it too long, like he didn't trust it. Or maybe he didn't trust why it was being given. "I don't have money," he murmured, almost ashamed. "I didn't ask," she said. Silence again. But now, something different. I unknit. Not peace. Not yet. But a loosening. As he ate, she sat across from him, watching without staring. Her fingers twisted the ring on her left hand, the gold long dulled, the gem missing. A memory rose. Not loud, Just a whisper of a kitchen long ago, a husband laughing over burnt toast, a boy running through the door asking what's for dinner. That was before the war, before the funeral, before the quiet stretched across her like a second skin. This man, this stranger, held that same weight behind his eyes. Not just loss, the shame of surviving it. She watched him finish the soup, saw the way he kept glancing at the door as if expecting her to change her mind. She recognized that too, the instinct to run before being told to leave. "You're not from around here," she said. "No, ma'am." "Running?" He looked up sharply. Not in fear, in surprise. Then he gave a slight, reluctant nod. She stood slowly, walked to the shelf, and took down a blanket, old but clean. Set it gently on the armrest of the chair nearest the stove. "You can stay," she said, her voice soft but certain. "Just for the night." He didn't thank her. He didn't need to. That kind of gratitude sits too deep for words. She turned away before he could see her hands shake, before she could doubt the decision. She didn't trust men anymore, but something in his silence matched her own. And in a world full of noise and betrayal, that was reason enough. The next morning, the world was bone white. Snow had come hard overnight, covered the road, buried the truck. The wind had quieted, but it left behind a silence too thick to breathe. Martha stood on the porch, arms wrapped in her shawl, watching the man. "Daniel," he had said, finally, as he checked under the hood. His breath steamed in the air like smoke from a dying fire. "It's no good," he muttered. "Radiators split. Won't move till I find parts." She didn't ask what he planned to do. He didn't offer. Instead, he stayed. One night became 2, then 3. He slept in the chair by the stove, ate little, spoke less. But he helped. Fixed the hinges on the back door, brought in firewood, mended the broken gate. Martha didn't stop him. She didn't ask him to stay either. But every time she came into the kitchen and saw him there, quiet, working, present, something in her chest softened, something that had been frozen for years. Until Thursday. It began with the dog barking. A low, guttural growl from outside the barn. Daniel was already at the window before Martha could move. He looked different now, stiff, alert, jaw tight. She saw his hand drop instinctively to his side, where a weapon might have hung once, long ago. "What is it?" she asked. He didn't answer, just pulled on his coat and stepped outside. She followed. There were tire tracks, fresh, deep in the snow, leading from the main road up to her property. Whoever drove hadn't come to visit. They'd come to watch. The tracks ended where the pines thickened, but Martha saw the truth in Daniel's eyes before he said it. "They found me." She didn't ask who, didn't need to. Daniel's past had always sat close to the surface, too quiet, too careful. Now it was bleeding into the present. "Who are they?" she whispered. He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time, she saw fear. Not for himself, for her. "Men I used to ride with, before I walked away." She blinked. "Outlaws?" He shook his head. "Debt collectors, worse. They buy pain and sell fear. I owed them more than I could repay, and now they want it back. They don't want money anymore," he said. "They want to make an example." Martha's chest tightened. Her hand found the railing to steady herself. "You brought danger here. I know. You should go. I can't outrun them. Not anymore." He stepped closer, voice low. "They're coming, Miss Martha. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. But they don't leave witnesses. And you—" He didn't finish. He didn't have to. She turned away. Her mind scratched. Med to throw him out, lock the door, light a lantern in the window and pray they'd pass by. But her hands, they gathered the blanket from his chair, folded it, set it back down. "You'll stay," she can't, said. It wasn't kindness. It was something deeper. Responsibility. She had let him in, and now the storm coming for him would come for her too. Snow still fell soft now, like feathers from some tired sky. The world outside was white and still. But inside the cabin, something had begun to thaw. Martha baked bread that afternoon. The flour dusted her hands, her apron, even the tips of her hair. Daniel chopped firewood in the back, slow, steady, deliberate. He didn't speak much, but when he came in and saw the warm crust on the table, he gave a nod, and that was enough. They ate by the stove. No table, just two people too old to pretend they weren't tired anymore. Later, she found him standing near the barn, staring at the edge of the woods where the tracks had been. He was holding her late husband's rifle, the old Winchester that hadn't been touched in years. "Still works," he said quietly. "Might need it." He held it out. She hesitated, then took it. It was heavier than she remembered. He didn't ask if she knew how to shoot. Instead, he placed her hands gently, one under the barrel, one at the grip, adjusted her shoulder. No jokes, no smirks, just quiet instruction, the kind that made you feel strong without being told you were. When she fired, the echo rolled over the snow like a wave. Birds rose from the pines. She lowered the gun and exhaled, her body trembling just slightly. "You're a fast learner," he said. "I buried a war veteran," she replied. He nodded, eyes still on the trees. "Then you know how heavy the silence can get." That night, they sat by the fire longer than usual. She stitched a tear in his coat while he cleaned the rifle. No words passed between them, just the soft sound of fabric pulling, metal clicking, and the fire whispering like an old friend. It was only when she brushed against his hand, by accident, that something cracked open. He flashed. So did she. But neither pulled away. Her fingers, lined and warm, rested on the scar across his knuckle, a deep one. He didn't explain it, didn't need to, just turned his hand over and traced the small burn mark on her wrist. "Stove," she said. "First winter alone. I fainted." He didn't speak, just kept holding her hand. And in that stillness something passed between them. Not romance, not desire, just recognition. Of pain, of time, of what it means to carry a life alone. Later she found herself setting 2 cups of tea without thinking, folding his blanket with care. Her hands remembered what it was like to care for someone. At bedtime, she lit the oil lamp, paused in the doorway, and looked at him once more. "You don't have to sleep in the chair," she said softly. "The couch pulls out." His eyes lifted, surprised, but not eager, just grateful. She turned before he could answer. Not embarrassed, not bold, just unsure. Like a woman who hadn't spoken softness in years, but suddenly remembered how. In the silence that followed, something old and wounded inside her whispered a thought she hadn't dared in decades. Maybe it's not too late. They came just after sundown. 3 trucks, no headlights, just the crunch of tires on frozen dirt, slow and deliberate. Martha saw them first from the kitchen window, dark shapes sliding through the white. Her breath caught. She didn't scream. Daniel stood at the barn, sharpening a spade. He looked up the moment the first truck stopped at the fence line. He didn't run. He didn't speak. Just walked inside the house and took down the Winchester from the wall. "They're here," Martha said, her voice like stone. "I know." He loaded the rifle slowly, calm, like a man dressing for his own funeral. "I'll go out there," he said. "Talk to them. End this before it starts." "You think they came to talk?" He looked at her. eyes heavy but clear. No. But if I stay inside, they'll burn this place to the ground with both of us in it. She reached for his arm, gripped it tighter than she thought she could. There's nothing here worth dying for. There's you, he said, and then he opened the door. The cold slapped them both as he stepped out into the dark. The snow crackled under his boots. 3 men waited beyond the gate, rough, lean, and sharp-eyed. One leaned against a truck, cigarette glowing in the dark. Another held a shotgun loosely at his side. The leader stepped forward. Tall, red coat, face like leather stretched too thin. His voice cut through the air like a saw blade. "Well, well, look what the wind blew back." Daniel didn't flinch. "You've made your point. I'm done running." "You're done all right. But this ain't about you anymore." He nodded toward the house. "She took you in," he sneered. "That makes her part of it now." Daniel took a step forward, rifle still down, but ready. "She's got nothing to do with this." "Oh, she does now. She saw your face, fed you, maybe more." The men behind him laughed, low and cruel. Martha stood behind the screen door, heart hammering like it hadn't in decades. And then the leader raised his hand. The man with the shotgun stepped forward. Daniel moved fast, faster than she thought a man his age could. The Winchester barked once, fire slicing the dark. The shotgunner fell hard, screaming into the snow. The others drew weapons. Chaos cracked the air. Gunfire, shouting, glass shattering. Martha ducked. Then silence, just wind. And Daniel's voice, ragged, from the porch. "Martha, stay inside." She ignored him. Ran out barefoot, into snow that burned like fire. Daniel stood on the steps, blood dripping from his side. 2 men were gone. The leader lay on the ground, gasping, a bullet in his gut. But Daniel was swaying. She caught him before he fell. "Why?" she whispered. "Because for once, I wasn't running for myself." He collapsed against her shoulder, heavy, trembling. In the snow, as sirens wailed faintly in the distance, Martha held him like she hadn't held anyone in 20 years, not as a woman afraid to love, but as one who finally had something worth losing again. The snow turned pink where it soaked into his shirt. Martha pressed the towel to Daniel's side, her hands shaking, breath ragged. The sirens grew louder, then stopped. Blue and red lights flickered across the frozen trees. Deputies poured in, cautious, guns drawn, shouting names into the night. She didn't move, didn't speak, just held him tighter. Daniel's eyelids fluttered open as they pulled up in a rush. His voice was barely a whisper. "Don't let them. Take me back." She looked up at the sheriff. Harland, the same man who used to bring her mail after her husband died. His face softened when he saw her. "He needs a doctor," Harland said gently. "Let us take him to Riverview. We'll figure the rest later." Martha nodded, but she didn't let go until they pried her hands away. Blood smeared her palms like some old wound reopened. They took Daniel in the back of the cruiser. One deputy remained behind to tape off the yard. The other 2 loaded the bodies, silent, solemn. The man in the red coat didn't make it. His mouth had frozen half open, a snarl sealed into death. Martha stood by the barn, her shawl flapping in the wind like a tattered flag. She watched the trucks disappear down the hill. The engine noise faded. The snow kept falling. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she went inside, picked up the bullet shells from her floor, wiped the broken glass from the sink, folded the bloodied towel and placed it in a bucket of water. The kettle whistled. She turned it off. Then she sat by the stove, alone, as the fire hissed and cracked. Everything was still again, but not the same. Outside, the dawn light pressed gently against the clouds, pale gold, quiet. The land wasn't healed, but it wasn't haunted anymore. And Martha, she was tired, yes, but empty. Later that day, she drove Daniel's truck down to Riverview herself. The radiator had been patched, just enough to make it through the hills. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She didn't leave a note. She just folded his coat on the passenger seat and whispered, "You said not to let them take you back, but I think you meant something else." Spring came late that year. The frost held on longer than usual, clinging to fence posts and porch rails like a memory that didn't want to be let go. But the snow melted. The creek began to murmur again. The earth remembered how to soften. So did she. Martha walked the property most mornings now, a cane in one hand, the other trailing the tops of wildflowers that had pushed through winter's silence. Her back still ached. Her hair was still silver, but something about her had straightened, like a spine that had remembered it once stood tall. Daniel came back in April. He didn't say much when he stepped off the bus at the edge of town. His side was still healing. The stitches had left a long, mean scar, but he wore it like a fact, not a burden. Martha was there waiting, arms crossed. "You look worse than your truck," she said flatly. He smiled. "So, what now?" he asked. She didn't answer, just turned and started walking toward the cabin. He followed. The next few weeks passed without ceremony. No confessions, no grand promises, just the slow rhythm of two lives learning to move beside each other. She let him plant tomatoes in the back garden. He fixed the attic window that had leaked for years. They sat together most evenings, tea between them, sometimes music from the old radio, sometimes just the crackle of fire. And sometimes, though not always, they touched. A hand resting on a forearm, a shoulder leaning in for warmth. Nothing urgent, nothing claimed. One night, she handed him a small tin box. Inside were old photos. A child, a man in uniform, a woman with black hair and eyes full of wind. "My husband," she said, "my son." Daniel looked at the photos without asking questions, then closed the lid and set it back in her hands. "I lost people too," he said. They didn't say more. They didn't need to. Months later, a letter arrived from a county court. The charges had been dropped, the investigation was closed, the bodies were buried, the past had been folded up and stored away, like an old coat hung in a back closet. Still there, but no longer worn. On the first warm day of June, Martha packed a basket with bread, fruit, and a bottle of wine. Daniel brought a blanket. They walked past the edge of the property, down to the creek. They ate in silence. And when the sun began to set, casting gold across the water, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. For the first time in 20 years, she didn't tremble because she was afraid. She trembled because she'd let herself feel again. The land was still quiet, but now it echoed, not with grief, but with the sound of two hearts remembering how to beat together.